We're on the bottom of Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. This Gemara is really a little bit of a copy of the previous Gemara. Sholach Rav Huna bar Oven. Rav Huna bar Oven sent the following halacha. Amaycha sada le'ishtay kansa. Someone who sells a sada to his wife is kaina. We had earlier suggested a possibility that when a man sells a property to his wife, what he's really doing is legluye zuzahu debai. He's just trying to uncover her secret bank accounts. So he just says, "Oh, I want to sell you this. I've got a Brooklyn Bridge to sell you. I'm going to sell it to you for. It's really worth $100,000. I'll sell it to you for $1,000." And she says, "Oh, let me go get my checkbook." And he says, "Oh, that's where your account is. That's where you have your money hidden." So he's not really selling. So even though he handed her a star, we disregard the sale. So he says, nevertheless, she's kind of. We don't go with that svar. So the woman is kind of the karka. We don't go with this svar of Baal Yehudasa. And the Baal gets the Paris because the general rule is anything that a woman buys while she's married becomes nichse malug, and the husband is the one who gets the Paris. So even though she bought it, it still is nichse malug. Biram, however, Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Avo, v'chol Gedei Lagdar Amru, b'matana bikesh litnula. Really, even though he sold it to her, it was really a matana. He really wanted to give it to her, and it was a kinyan. V'lama kasav law l'shum mecher. Why did he write it in the form of a sale? Kedei leyafes es kaicha. Like we said yesterday, he just wants her to have the advantage. If something is sold, if someone has something as a purchase, they're entitled to not just get the property, but they also have a right that if it's taken away from them later by someone who is owed money from the person who sold it to them, they can go back to the seller and say, "You have to reimburse me because my property was taken away." But if it's a matana, if it's just a gift, you can't go back to the giver and say, "You have to reimburse me." You can't look a gift horse in the mouth. If it gets taken away, that's life. So he wanted his wife to have the extra protection that if it's ever taken away from him, from the wife, by someone who is owed money by the husband, that she can go back to the husband and get reimbursed. So even though it's in the form of a sale, it actually is a matan. Meisvei, fact the Gemara. Lava mina eved, v'shechrei, mina isha v'girsha. Someone who borrowed from an eved, and then afterwards the eved went free. Or he borrowed from a woman, from his wife, and then he was Megarisha, Ein Lohen Alav Klum. They can't go back and collect the debt. My timer, that he borrowed the money and gave her a star. It's not it's because they never really bought. He never borrowed money from them. He just gave them the star, so they'll produce the money that they have, their money that they have hidden. But he never really borrowed the money, which is what we had on Amud Aleph. We had the same discussion, right before this. So, and Rashbam explained, we're not talking about the actual money of the loan. We're talking about where he had written a star saying that his karka is meshubah to this loan. So he gave her a piece of paper saying, "I borrowed money, and if I don't pay it back, my karka is meshubah." But all he was really trying to do was find out what money she had. He never really borrowed the money. So we say, my time, so that is dependent. The only reason that makes sense, if the Eved or the Isha, what we're talking about is the Isha, has a star, why wouldn't we trust the star and say she's entitled to take from him his karka that's backing up the loan? It must be because it was never really a loan. It was just Legluzuz. It was just a strategy by him to find out which money she had in. So tomorrow, no, that's different. It's true that over there we say the Gluya Zuzu who deba. But it's big shadi hasan gloy lishvi inish avid levelish malva. A person the mashvi inish avid levelish malva. A person does not generally like to lend money. Doesn't want to become a debtor. So if we have the general rule that a person doesn't want to become a lender, and we also have the svar of Gluya Zuzu who deba, that he was really just trying to uncover our money, we assume that there wasn't a real loan in that case. But in our case, where the wife has a shtar mechira, a person does sell his properties. There's nothing disfavored about that, so we can assume it was a regular sale. Amarav, hamaycher sadal ishtay kansa. Someone who sold a field to his wife. His wife is kind of. We don't say this svara. We paskin taka that we don't worry about this thing of the Gluya Zuza who debought, that he's just doing it to uncover her money. And once it's done, even though the woman is kaina, the husband eats the pears, like we said, because it becomes nechse malug, and all whatever she acquires during the marriage belongs to the husband gets the pears. B'matana, if he gave it to her b'matana, konsa ve'ena ba'al pears. In that case, we say that someone who gives the matana b'ayin yafa, he gives it b'ayin yafa, he gives it fully. So he's giving it to her even with the Paris. He doesn't even want to have the Paris. He's giving to her the rights to the Paris as well. Rabbi Elazar says both of them are kind of both with a matana and with a mecher. The din is the Baal doesn't get the Paris. So the question is, why doesn't the Baal get the Paris of a mecher if he's saying that the mecher is sold to the wife, to the husband? I'm sorry. If someone sold to his wife, what? Even though she gets the karka, we don't say l'gluya zuzah huduasa, but now it becomes nechse malug. So why wouldn't the Baal get Paris? We don't say about the meicher is b'ma'ayin yafa meicher. We say on the matana b'ayin yafa meicher. So the explanation must be that, like we said before, that that this is really supposed to be a matana, even though he's making it as a mecher. What he really has in mind is he's trying to give the money, and he's just doing it behind that she should be able to have the advantage of being a matana as well. Like we said, I'm sorry, she should have the advantage of being a mecher, that she'll be able to get reimbursement if it's taken away from her by people who he owes money to. So therefore, if it really is a matana, then we say a matana is ba'ayin yafa, and the Baal is not a echel peiros. Of Rav Chuzda of the Rav Elazar, Rav Chuzda paskin like Rav Elazar in this case, where someone sold his wife karka, and he paskin that the husband doesn't get the pairs. Amalei Rav Nukva, Rav Nechemia ben Bantz, Rav Ukva said, and Rav Nechemia ben Bantz said to Rav Nechemia, who was the son of the daughter of Rav. Rav Chizda to Rav Chizda, Shavik ma Rav Riva Avid Kazutri. How are you passing like Rav Elazar connected Rav? Rav was greater than Rav Elazar. Amaleva no nami kedivrei Rav Raviavdi. He said, I'm also doing like someone great. The Chi also Rav and Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rav and said b'shem Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan was equally great as Rav. Echad zeh konsa ve'eina ba'al oichel peres. Rabbi Yechanan also passing like this, that with a mecher, the din is going to be that the Baal is not Eichel Paris, because it's really, in substance, it's a matan. Someone who sells a sada to his wife, loy kansa, not like what we just paskin, that we says that it's not a good kinyan, because we say l'gliya zuzahu debai, it's really just intending to uncover her money, and therefore it's not a valid kinyan. Va'abal Eichel Paris, and the husband eats the pears. Matana konsa ve'ena ba'al Eichel Paris. And if it's a matana, if it's a gift, then it's a kinyan, then there's no l'gluya zuzah, and the Baal is not echel peres. So the Gemara asks on the first thing, Tarti. The first thing we said is hamaycha sadal ishtay loy kansa. The husband is not kaina, v'Baal echel peres, and he eats the peres. What does that mean? If she's not kaina, what do you have to tell me that the Baal is echel peres? She never was kaina. The whole sada belongs to the Baal. It's not that the Baal gets the peres. the karka itself belongs to him. So kasha. The reason why it's not kaina, why we said it's not kaina, is because the husband is looking to uncover her money. So it depends on what money she pays with. If she pays with hidden money, mois tmunim, so then we say taka that the husband was just intending to uncover her money. But when did we that second part that we said that the baal is echel paris, that's talking about moish et tmunim. If she has money, her money is openly available. We know that she has money. So then there's no reason for the husband to think that if he says he's going to sell her karka, she's going to uncover hidden money. She has open money anyway. She has a $100,000 of cash sitting on her desk. Yehuda makes this chiluk that this din of Gilui Zuz is only if she has only hidden money. But if she has money that's openly available, then there's no svara of a Gilui Zuz.
Yeah. How do we know that she doesn't have a lot more available?
But he's not going to uncover it anyway. She'll just use her available money. She's not stupid.
Uh-huh.
Why would she take from her hidden bank account?
No, she's so flush with money that even if she has more, she doesn't need it for this purchase.
As long as she has enough money to pay for this purchase, he's not going to get anywhere by offering it. Ein mekablim pigdoinus. We can't accept a pikadon. Loimin hanoshim, meaning if a guy is he's a professional shamer. Let's say he's a shepherd, and one day a woman comes. Loimin hanoshim, he can't accept from a woman, from a wife. Loimin avadim, and not from an eved. Loimin atinoikus, and not from children. All of these people, let's say not a sheep is like a little bit of a bad example. Let's say someone comes in with a Rolex watch, a wife or an eved or a child. He says to someone, "Listen, I got this Rolex watch. Could you wash it for me for the next 5 years?" He has to suspect that all these people got it illegally. They took it, and they're trying to hide it from their husband or from their master or from whoever the kids stole it from. Kabul mina isha, but if he accepted from a woman, from a wife, yachzel isha, he should return it to the isha. That means the din is he shouldn't accept it. He shouldn't be misayeh loise avera by taking this thing and letting her hide it from the person she took it from her husband. But once he took it, he should return it to her. That means this is just it's a chashash. It's something we're concerned about. It's not like 100%. We're not saying that every woman who has something, it's stolen. But in order that we shouldn't, the Chacham were misaken that you shouldn't take from them in order not to make it easier for them to take, if that's what they did. But if you once a shamer, once a watcher already accepted it, he can't say, "Oh, I'm not returning it to you because it doesn't belong to you." He has to assume just for purposes of this takana that he shouldn't take it. Once you took it, you have to return it to him. The mesa, and if she dies, yachsil abayli, you give it back to her husband, because anyway he's Yerush her. The husband is Yerush's wife. So even though he would have returned it to her if she was alive, now that she's dead, you give it back to her husband. Kibul mina eved, if you took from the eved, even though you were not supposed to, yachsil eved, you still return it to the eved again, even though we're chayshish, even though we suspect he might have stolen it, but we don't assume that he stole it. The emes yachsil rabbi, and if the eved dies, you return it to his rabbi. This is the big problem in the Rishonim, why you give it back to his rabbi, because a eved, a master, does not yarshin his eved. He doesn't inherit the belongings of the eved. But we do say masha kana eved kana rabbi. So it's the Rishonim, the Rashbam holds that that you give it to the master because we assume that we can assume that whatever money the slave has probably belonged to the master and was stolen from him. So there's like more of a chashash that it was stolen here than by the Isha. So even though we don't have a Yerusha, but once the Eved dies, there's enough of an assumption that makes it that we should return it to the rabbi, even without the din of Yerusha. Kibul min hakatan. Other Rishonim say a different shot because this is a little shver. You're saying that we don't assume it's stolen enough that we would return it to the master while the Eved is alive. But once the Eved dies, we say that's enough of an assumption to justify returning it to the master, even though there's no din Yerusha. Kibul min hakatan, if he accepted a pikadon, he accepted an object to watch from a katan, yasalei skula. In that case, you can't return it to the katan because the katan will lose it. You can't return a Rolex. So you make from it a fund, an escrow fund. Gemara is going to explain how you protect the money of the katan. And if he dies, you give it to his yarshim. And if all of these three, the woman or the Eved or the Katan, if they died, and at the time of death they said, "Oh, this Rolex that I gave you to watch, it was really belonged to this other person." That means that that it wasn't really theirs. Someone had given it to them as a pikadon. Yasa kapirushin. You listen to what they say. You assume on their deathbed they were telling the truth about where it really was supposed to go to. Ve'im lav. But if not, so the Rashbam explains what does this ve'im lav means. Yasa perish l'pirushan. Let's see the Rashbam. Ve'im lav yasa perish l'pirushan. Kloimer. Ve'im loy mehem lahu nifkad. Shapikadon shaloisa ploinihu. If, let's say, this Isha, Rachel, says this, she gave this Rolex to Ruvain to watch. And then on her deathbed, she says that the Rolex really belonged to Levi. Levi had lent it to her. And Ruvain, who's the one watching it, doesn't believe her. He thinks it really belonged to he thinks it really belonged to her husband. And she's lying about it. Then we say, Yasa perish leperusha. You should go according to what the Shomer has to follow his instinct about what he believes really happened. So let's see the Rashbam Vaita. Elishal Bailam Shalahem, who mitoch busha ein roitzim loimashu shel Bailam. She's embarrassed to say that it was her husband's and she stole it. So she says, I got it as a pikadon from a second party. So the lichziku kigazlanim v'ganovim yasa nifkid perish achal pirusha sheyachzol balein shel elu v'loylo oiseplani. She should give it to her husband and not to whoever it was that the wife designated. I mean, it's a very interesting din. We're saying that the person who got it as a shamer makes his own investigation. If he doesn't believe her, he suspects that she's claiming that it belonged to a third party to avoid the conclusion that she stole it from her husband. She's saying that the other person gave it to her as a pikadon. Now she re-gifted it. She re-gave it as a pikadon just to avoid admitting that she stole it. So therefore, he can say, I'm not giving it back to the person she designated. I'm going to give it to the person that makes the most sense to me. Gemara gives an example of this. The Visu de Rabba Babachana, the wife of Rabba Babachana, Ki Kashachva, when she died, Amra, Hani Kipi, the Marsu Bnei Barsa. These earrings that I have belong to Marsa and his daughter's sons, from this his daughter's children, and they gave it to me as a pikadon. Said it's not my husband's, it really belongs to a third party. Also, the Rav, they came to Rav, Amalei, if you believe her, do what she said. But if you don't trust her, if you think that she was just trying to hide the fact that she really stole it from her husband, then you just give it to her husband. Another pshat is you have to make an investigation and look into the facts. Look at this Marsa, Ubnei Barsa de Marsa, that she's claiming that she borrowed it from, and see if they are really people, wealthy people, that could have had such earrings. If the facts go along with what she's saying, that it's possible that they lent it, then you can listen to her. But if not, don't listen to her and just give it to someone else. Give it to her husband. So we said, we said if you take a pikadon from a cotton, which you're not supposed to do, you take an object from a cotton to watch. You can't return it to the cotton because he's going to ruin it. So what do? You make from it a fund. My school or Chizda a Sefer Torah. You get him a Sefer Torah because a Sefer Torah, he'll get the benefit of learning from it. It will keep its value, so he won't squander it. If you give him cash, he'll end up spending it on candy. Rabbi Barhuna Amadikla de Achamini Tamri says you should get a date tree, so he'll be able to eat dates. He'll have a constant source of income from the date tree that will last till he's older. We said a father cannot get a chazaka in his child's belongings, and vice versa. A son can't in his father's, because very often a father will allow his son to make use of his property, and similarly, a son will allow his father to make use of his property to sow it and reap it and harvest it and get the benefits, even though he didn't sell it to him. Rav Yosef afilu chalku. Rav Yosef says this is even after the son has gone off and started his own business. Even if he left the father's house, they still have a relationship, and it's possible the father will tell him, if you want, you could use my field that I'm not using, and vice versa. Rava says no. Once the son has left, then it's all business. It's a business relationship. And if the son is working for 3 years on the father's property, we assume the father charged him money. So I've known some fathers like, well, one way and some like the other way. I feel in my case, I feel more like Rabbi Yosef. Even once you send them out of the house and they have 5 kids, they still feel like entitled to go into my freezer and take whatever food they want. It's like
can't shake them off.
No, it's not so easy. Even today's my last daughter's wedding, and I still don't have most. I only have one off the book so far, and even that one still comes to my house, and like they look at it like they're shopping at the grocery store. Amr of Yirmiyah midifti, Avid Rapapi Uvda Chalkuloi. Rapapi says that once they're split, once the child goes away, then there's no longer a chazak. Then we don't have this din that there's no chazak, and they can make a chazak. Kirav. Amrav Nachma Yitzchak Ishtoili Rechia mi Hormuz Ardashid. Rechia from Hormuz Adarshid told me Ishtoile Ravacha Bar Yaakov that he heard from Ravacha Bar Yaakov, Mishpeit Rav Bar Yaakov, Shem Ravacha Bar Yaakov, Chol Kuloi. That if the child left, if he was machalik, then there's no such restriction, and there can be a chazak. The helchas achav kulak. Halacha is taka that once a child grows up and goes away, there can be a chazak. Tanya nami hachi ben shechalak v'ishtish niskarsha, a son that left his father and a woman that was niskarsha rei kashar koladam. Then a son can make a chazaka by his father and a father by his son, and a woman by her husband. Once they're discouraged, they can make chazak with someone another. Itma. One of brothers. We're really just going to start this sugya a little bit. One of the brothers, meaning a father died, Yaakov died, and left over a bunch of brothers. And let's say the oldest brother became the administrator he was the executor of the estate. So since he was the executive of the state, he was writing checks and he was doing transactions. He was buying and selling, and he was putting his own name on the transactions. When he would go to buy a piece of property, they said, "Who's signing the shtar?" He said, "Oh, I'm going to sign the shtar." And he had pieces of property that it said that this property, the deed on it said that it was sold to this oldest brother, this executor, and afterwards he says, even though he was the representative of the estate, he said, "This is my personal property. It didn't come. This particular property I didn't get from all my transactions I was doing for the estate. That was from my mother's father. He had a different mother than all the other brothers or the other Yarshim. He said, that's my personal property that I got from my grandfather from my mother's side. Amarav, Olav Lahavi Raya. Rav says this person who's the executor of the state, and we have no real explanation of how he's coming up with these properties. We don't have a way to justify, even though he said mi beis avi ima, but we never before saw that he got this Yerusha. And now all of a sudden he's popping up with Yerushas after he became the executor on the state. It looks a little suspicious. He has to bring a raya that the property belongs to him and it's not something that he was doing on behalf of the estate. So Shmuel says, no, he's the muhsik, he's holding on to it. They have to bring a raya that it's not his individual property. Amar Shmuel, Moideli Abba. Shmuel says, however, Rav is moided to me, shemes, that if this brother who was doing the transactions and claimed that this particular property belonged to him from Yerusha that he got, if he dies and they want to take it from his Yarshim, they have to bring a raya because we're tying. We make the argument on behalf of the Yarshim. The Yarshim have no way of knowing where it came from. As far as they know, their father said it belonged to him. So the father would have had to bring a raya, but they're not going to be able to bring a raya. They have no, so we tie on their behalf and we switch the burden of proof onto the brothers who are trying to take it away from the Yarshim of this executor. How can you make a taina and say that these children are going to be believed, even though we wouldn't have believed the father? The father had to bring a raya, and now we're saying his children, when he dies, we make a taina on their behalf, and they don't have the burden of proof. The burden of proof goes to the other way. Rava tried to take a zuga de sarbel is a pair of scissors. I don't know if you know, they're called a pair of scissors. When you take it apart, it's basically two knives. So it's called a zuga. Zug means a pair. It's because it's a pair of knives. That's what a scissor is. V'safra de gata and a sefer of agadata. He did not take them miyasmi below raya. He would require that. I'm sorry. Rabbah did take out this scissors and this sefer agata from Yisraelim below raya without bringing a raya that it belonged to him, even though the Yisraelim, the owner, the person who had them beforehand, would have claimed that they're his. Rav says, listen, I lent it to your father and I'm taking it back. Zach the Gemara. So the Gemara answers, these are things that people normally lend. Scissors and svarim are things that people lend. He said, I'm sorry, this is still part of the kasha, that someone who's holding on to something, let's say he has a library book, and he says, oh, I bought it from the library. And the library says, what do you mean? These are library books. You have to prove that you bought it from the library. Otherwise, we assume it's something that you borrow. So the same thing with this scissors and a sefer. If someone says that it's mine because I have it I'm a mafsek, and the other person says, but I have a raya that belonged to me originally, we don't say the chazaka wins in that case, because something that's normally lent, you don't have a raya. So we see from here that even if it's Yisraelim, since the father wouldn't have been believed to say it belongs to him because it's something that's normally lent, we don't listen to the assignment. We don't tie now on behalf of the assignment to say that they bought it. So l'chayra, this would be the same thing over here with the karka that with the karka that came with the shtaris. Why would he say that we give it to the assignment and they don't have to bring a raya? So Gemara kasha, it's taka a good kasha. Okay, well hopefully as Hashem will continue tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock.
Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Thank you.